The seagulls follow trawler. It's because they think sardines will be thrown into the sea. Thank you very much.
Talking nonsense. So I thought, no, enough's enough. Why should I put up with that? Talking nonsense. So I thought, no, enough's enough. Why should I put up with that? Don't back down, double down. Don't back down, double down.
Yes, here we go. It's the Monday Club on a Tuesday. John Duncan loves it like that, mate. And well, it was a necessary Tuesday show as opposed to a Monday because, well, Jonathan, I just couldn't face it. I don't think you could either, mate. How the devil are you, son?
Yeah, I'm far better today than I was after my overindulgence over the weekend. There was a bit of a technical knockout, shall we say, to the Monday Club due to alcohol indulgence. But we are now back and ready to go, and I am very much looking forward to this.
Definitely, mate. Definitely. Now, obviously, it doesn't mean the bus stops, Jonathan, when us two go out on the lash. Not that they were together on the lash, we were in Stirling, I think. I was at the game with Regan Stevenson. What a day. What a lad. It was great fun. But the bus, Jonathan, stepped up when it was needed. Luckily enough, David Logue hosted the show. I think he was all on it now. I'm going to get around now, because Phil McGinley was on it. I think that must be about his 9th or 10th show. Terry was on it. Bruce played guitar. And Scott Cameron had a brilliant show as well. I think it was only 5. There wasn't more than that, was there? But aye, thanks to the boys for doing that. It was brilliant. The bus, not even me in the comments section, which I've been lurking in before, so it was the first time ever we managed to have that happen. So a big thank you. And what a fucking good job they did as well, Jonathan. I know you caught up on it yesterday, didn't you?
Yeah, it was a top show. They did all put in a lot of time, a lot of effort went into it, and you could tell it was a really enjoyable one to actually watch back. And I'd definitely encourage anyone that hasn't done so to get that one watched, get that one liked. And you know, it was a great effort from David, and obviously proved he was more than capable standing driver.
Totally, mate. Totally, mate. Brown Warriors breaking tradition, having fish on a Tuesday. Good for you, mate. I like that. Charles Smith says, we're looking fresh, boys. I'm off to work, but enjoy the show. All good, mate. OllieFootball.com, Jonathan, for their continued sponsorship. We know that the T-shirts have, they've done pretty well. And if anyone's not got one yet, or if they're looking to get a second or a third, the option is there. Fanboyfootball.com. But Jonathan, let's get down to it, because I think I've done my thank yous. I think we've done our sponsorship bit. It's now time to talk about the Celtic Now, obviously, you are being famed, Jonathan, right now for the knockout blow, and I don't mean at the weekend, mate. But I think it'd be fair to say the knockout blow is becoming a bit of a feature on Monday. I wouldn't call Sunday quite the knockout blow, Jonathan, but I would call it something like job done, just about. What do you make of that? Because it wasn't a display that I think any of us will particularly be ranting and raving about. I don't think it was the worst display in the world either. We could talk about the reasons for that in a wee moment. But yeah, I think it was close enough to being job done, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would agree with that. It was one of those games where the knockout blow, it never really happened, but that wasn't to say there wasn't opportunities for it to happen. I mean, if you're using the boxing analogy, Rangers did leave themselves open at times to get whacked in the temple, and Celtic did have some really good opportunities to actually get themselves into a position where Rangers could not have came back from the canvas from. We had them on the ropes for long periods in the first half. They've obviously came back into it in the second, and then I think the narrative for a lot of people has been the fact that we were a bit clinging on towards the end, and we were kind of just wanting the bell, really. But it's a points victory for Celtic at the weekend, really, isn't it? It's pretty much a case now where they know they're on the brink. We all wanted to see the final knockout blow, but it's more just another couple of jabs have been administered at this point. I would agree with you. Not likely to be a game that will live long in the memory for most of us there. It's one we're just going to be like, yeah, we kind of did what we needed to do. We got ourselves over the line as a sort of bare minimum. We needed the draw, really. But, it's now set ourselves up, beat Hearts next week, and it's done. So it's a situation where, yes, of course, you want to end up getting it done against Rangers when you have the opportunity, because it doesn't come around every day. But at the same time, Celtic were not expected to win this championship by many people at the start of the season. And if you'd said to us, you're just going to have to wait on your title celebration for another week and you'll have to wait until you play Hearts, I think we'd have all taken that, wouldn't we?
Oh, I think so. I mean, I think we need to be smart that way, and perspective's always needed. I mean, well, particularly at this stage of the season when we're so close to being, league champions again. Did we see it coming? No, we've admitted that. But I think when we look at the game as a whole, Jonathan, first and foremost, I thought Celtic initially, once they got the goal from Jota, were a wee bit wasteful. After that, with chances they had. I also felt that there was at times during the game over complications from Celtic, I would call it, Jonathan, when it doesn't always need to be. I don't know what's drilled into them, how much it's drilled into them that they've got to do that passing at the back thing. But at times you're sitting watching it going, because what actually you find happening is that they do 3-4 passes, Jonathan, back to the goalie, and he goes long anyway. I think sometimes there needing to be a wee bit more sharp thinking, proactive to getting themselves out of trouble and buying us a wee bit of time. Just a couple of observations. Did you think Celtic had added to their goal tally, particularly in the first half, more than what they did? And then second half, when they were under a wee bit more pressure, did we invite a wee bit too much on?
Yeah, well, I think certainly in the first half, we should have got ourselves into a more commanding position. I think particularly the one that sticks out to me is the one Maeda goes for the header. He's just got to score. I remember sitting in the pub and just watching it, just throw yourself at it. That's all he had to do there. And McGregor's put him off, and he's not fancied the thought of a collision with him, and he's just pulled out ever so slightly, and it's made the difference between that being 2-0 for me on that one. Jota has another decent chance with a header, but it was a proper winner's header, wasn't it? Let's be honest, it's so far away. And then Maeda in the second half again should really be hitting the target, but he's managed to put it, over the bar. So there was definitely opportunities there, which I think sometimes people are forgetting just because of how the game finished. That Celtic also had their moments in that first half, and they could have been truly out of sight long before Rangers really got a foothold. In the game. In terms of the second half, I think Celtic really, really were tiring as the second half went on, and that's why they were giving away so many chances. I think that's the most tired I think I've seen Carter Vickers looking at, a long time. Particularly when he's getting ragdolled for one of them, the chances Sakala has, which has just don't really happen to Carter Vickers all season. And I think Celtic did invite a lot of that pressure onto themselves with the passing around the back. They just didn't seem to be able to find a way of getting up the pitch at times. And, when Rangers do get to 1-1, it did look as if, there was only going to be one winner if indeed someone was going to go on to win from that point. And I don't think Celtic managed the game particularly well. And in some ways were fortunate in the end to get with a draw, particularly when you consider the chances Rangers had towards the end of the game, which actually quite nicely leads me on to my knockout of the week this week. And it's not so much because it was a knockout performance from Celtic, it's far from it. But in terms of one man that stood firm when Rangers could have reignited their hopes in the title race, my knockout of the week is actually going to a guy I never thought was going to be particularly great for Celtic when he first came in. I was a bit confused as to whether or not he was going to be a good fit. I thought he might have came up, from England and just been looking at this game with a bit of disdain, a la Joey Barton type figure, and he's completely warmed to the club. And I couldn't have been happier for a man like Joe Hart to have his moment where he makes a few absolutely crucial saves at one each. And as far as I'm concerned, the draw was always going to be enough to make sure there was no lingering doubts from any of us that the league title was coming on. Rangers had to win that game to start and ask another question. And for the reason that Joe Hart makes the saves when he does and makes sure that we get that point that pretty much finishes Rangers as far as I'm concerned in the title race now, he is my knockout of the week.
I think that's fair. I think it's fair because I think he had some shaky moments as well with the ball at his feet. I could see some interesting debate there that at times we were, we've got to be braver on the ball, but at times the press is just simply too much. Celtic didn't have enough options there. I think the bravery in the ball thing's hard. But you know what? It's one of those things where we've got to look at this now and go, like, that team is, I don't know, I think we showed better form early in the season, we'll put it that way, like David's saying here. And I think right now, maybe we're just getting to the point where get the job over the line, get, whatever you want to call it, right? And then come the summer, what we're going to benefit from this title that is in the post, if not quite there yet, is, remember, obviously, group stage football, Jonathan, of the Champions League. Now, that actually brings a lot more to it than just Jonathan, the prestige. It actually gives us time that we have never, ever had. Our first game of the season will not be against some champions of some, obscure country. We're going to actually be able to, Jonathan, have a longer pre-season without the stress, without the pressure. Often there's negative results during that time as well, which isn't always the best thing for the mindset going into a campaign. And I think, if we're all being honest, I think the one thing we can say about the team that we're up against on Sunday is there's not much between them, Jonathan, at this moment in time. And I think we have to accept that. And I think that means that come the summer, the benefits of having that bit longer for Ange to be integrating, hopefully 2, 3, 4 new signings. It gives him more time to engineer moves out the club for the likes of your Ajetis, Barcases. I've got a feeling that I'm going to be saying that in 3 years' time, mate. Do you know what I mean? I think we'll get rid of Ajeti this summer. I don't know how many years he's got in his deal, but he seems to be in there forever. I know it's only 2 years, and same with Barkas, but I think when we've got longer, that you don't need to be focusing on these. They are important games, Obviously, these Champions League games that you're playing, these qualifiers that you're playing at the start of the season, but they're against teams you can know very little about, Jonathan, at times as well. You've got to do your homework on. You're playing in obscure climates. You're playing on dodgy pitches sometimes, tighter pitches, or in other instances, hostile atmospheres. You've not had a proper pre-season to get ready for that, and suddenly these games of proper magnitude are coming really early in it. So I think Celtic are going to get a huge benefit, Jonathan, from the delay in us having to actually compete in Europe. And I think that's why it's so important that we don't panic right now if performance wasn't great. I mean, Rangers couldn't beat us at the weekend. I'm a positive person, and I think you could see by reactions at the end, Jonathan, they only react like that when they know they've lost something. And I tell you what, the reaction of 700, I was there watching them, was 700 people who didn't seem to think their European semi-final on Thursday was the be-all, end-all. I seen 700 people, Jonathan, knowing they had to get the knockout blow of the week, and it had to come from them, and they couldn't do it. They couldn't do it. They couldn't get the job done. Celtic now have 3 more attempts at getting the job done, and we will.
Yeah, no, absolutely. As I say, it's an unbelievable position we've found ourselves in now, and it's only going to go one way after getting a very good point. As it turns out, it was never a game we had to win. It's just one that we've looked at, and obviously with the fact we could have won the league, we were obviously wanting to win that type of game. And I think the fact that we've been in these sort of games previously, and we have managed to, win the league against them. I remember particularly the game against with Brendan Rodgers in charge, where we did them 5-0. And I think a lot of people are still hoping that that's going to be the case going forward, as you're going to get similar sorts of games. But the fact of the matter is, the two teams are now a lot more evenly matched. Rangers are not in the Europa League semi-finals completely by accident. I think we have to respect that they're a good side. And I think they were obviously in their last chance saloon. They were going to throw everything at us. They never found a way to win the game. Just like, by the way, they didn't find a way to win the game in 90 minutes in the Scottish Cup semi-final. Rangers have only actually beaten Celtic once in 90 minutes this season, and that was when Celtic had a striker up front that was already looking out the door and was only half interested in even being involved at Ibrox on that day. So there is a lot to be positive about from a Celtic point of view. On top of that, you're looking at it now. Celtic should go on to win the league. We're all in agreement here now that they'll take one of their chances, whether it comes against Hearts next week or whether it's delayed further. And that then opens them up to getting a £40 million jackpot for winning the league title this year. In terms of financial reward, this was one of the most important league championships in the last 20 years in Scotland. It was huge, the amount of money that was on offer for winning this one. And when you're looking at it like that, you give Ange Postecoglou that sort of money to spend. Celtic are going to only get better. That's the thing. And, you're just looking at it in terms of who he's already brought in and how much quality he's already got into his team. And you're just beginning to think, if you give him another £40 million to go away and spend over the summer, we don't know what's going to happen with our rivals. They may get into the Champions League through the qualifiers. We don't know either way on that front.
Yeah.
The thing for me is that Rangers are probably going to need to rebuild their squad a wee bit, because I think there's going to be a few players that will leave them in the summer just because they've got to the end of their time at the club. It's just a natural phasing out moment for a few. Yeah, that's it. It's a natural phasing out moment for some of them. So I think in terms of that, Rangers will actually have to do more work in the summer window than Celtic will need to do. But at the same time, if you're giving Celtic £40 million to spend, and Celtic have only lost the Rangers once in 90 minutes in 5 games this season, and this is before Celtic hit the prime under Postecoglou, as far as I'm concerned. Celtic are only going to get better. It's all looking extremely positive going forward, and I think it's just one of those ones we need to have a little bit of perspective that things have changed now. Rangers are not the same team that were just getting dumped 5s, emptied for 6s or whatever by Celtic. So it's one of those ones I think you have
4s
to
and 5s. 4s and 5s.
4s and 5s, not quite as many as 6s. Should have been.
I don't remember 6, but yeah, that's good though. It's good, Jonathan.
It was good. I was going to say, we definitely should have probably put 6 past him at least once or twice.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, I mean, the fact is the games have now changed since then. It's now a much more evenly matched contest, and it's going to be for a wee while. But the bottom line is, Celtic win the league, there's 40 million in the bank, and from your perspective, Russell, do we think Ange now gets the transfer kitty to go ahead and actually spend that money?
I think we need to have a wee chat about that. I'm going to get a wee bit of a disclaimer I'll give, right? My honest truth for why one of the main reasons it was so important we won the league and we got the 40 million is my hunch is Rangers are capable of negotiating the Champions League qualifiers better than us. They've got more of a chance of making it still anyway. So at least this way, I know it's not always about them anyway, but I've said that's not being a slider. I just mean I want us focusing on European competition and things as well. But also to carry on competing in Premier competitions in Europe, you need to get the job done in the league. Now, if they were to navigate from second place, 40 million, that just means we're level. They've not made any financial gain on us. It just means we're level. If we'd finished second, judging by our recent qualification records, might not make it, and suddenly you're 40 million down. Of course, there is a possibility they have a Malmo moment again if they're in the qualifiers, and again, one of the other benefits is they have to start the season a lot earlier and get less time to prepare. Christ, we all know, Jonathan, the difficulties of that. So having it in the bank early then allows you, let's be honest, I've seen someone else saying it in the comments, Ange isn't going to get £40 million to spend. That's, it's not going to happen. But what it does do is give us time to work out what the transfer budget is going to be, how likely it is we'll get permanent deals over the line. And we'll talk about that in a wee bit because I know it's been big news today. But I think what we need to start looking at is, as a club, how do we improve? Are we producing enough from our youth side of things, for example? Has there been enough investment there? Is the training ground up to the level it's always got to be? Things like that. I also want to see us, Jonathan, when we're trying to get guys like Jota, and we will talk about Jota, the footballer, as well. I was sent an interesting photo, or a couple of photos by Rachel, a pal of mine who had done the tour of Celtic Park. I mean, the changing rooms and that, Jonathan, are, it's old school, mate. I think, but I might like a wee bit of old school sort of vibe, Jonathan, in life. But I think as a football club, when you're trying to get these guys to remain at the club, then what you're seeing out in the front, Celtic, with the disco lights, I think that's the steps in the right direction. I know it sounds petty, but I think it is. I think the hybrid pitch that they've got was a step in the right direction. Things like that. I also think, let's get the certain sections of that main stand sort of redeveloped, Jonathan. And if it's needing a wee bit of money and it's getting a bit tired, let's spend a bit there as well. I also think, undoubtedly, we need to now get a scouting network set up. We're going to talk about the appointment of Mark Lawwell. I know there's a mixed reaction to that. And I think, obviously, we need to be spending a wee bit more money, Jonathan, investing in the backroom team that Ange is working with year on year, whilst we've done very well this year. In my opinion, we've got to be looking at building something for Ange in terms of a team, and something that's going to leave us potentially, because it doesn't all need to be Ange guys, by the way, right? He'll be able to pick a coach, Jonathan, right? And he doesn't always take coaches with him, as we know. But I would love to see us have a sort of team below it that when Ange goes, there's no big issue there. There's structure at the club, Jonathan. We've got a plan in place. And I don't mean John Kennedy as manager, but we've got a plan in place. And then I think you can see Celtic evolve. I think there's got to be more of a strategy this time, if and when that sort of check, whatever it's made up of, the 40 million arrives. I think it's time that we invest it wisely as a club and try and make our growth and our appearances at things like the Champions League less than one-offs, Jonathan, and more as regular appearances, because I think that's what we've been lacking a wee bit as well. We've had opportunities, but we need to be this year, whilst we've got this longer summer, whilst we've already got ahead of recruitment now in, let's get the other building blocks in there. I mean that in terms of infrastructure, training grounds, scouting networks, backroom teams for Ange, and whatever else you can shake a stick at, mate.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. I think it sometimes goes a little bit unnoticed because we're always thinking of the playing side of things when you see that money sort of coming in. And there's no two ways about it. There will be some money, absolutely, that will get spent on the playing side. But there are other departments to the football club as well that could possibly be doing with some work. I mean, you've mentioned the changing rooms, along with obviously the main stand. I think has been one that's been talked about for a long time. I think there's very limited work they can do with it because they had talked about putting an extra tier on it, hadn't they, before? But I think it's a listed building, so that rules that argument out completely, I believe. But there's, even taking that to one side, there's so much potential with what they could do, with the club. I think certainly when you're looking at it from a youth academy perspective, there's not been as many really. I mean, you've got Ralston that's now kind of getting a lot of first team games. He's obviously came through the youth and Welsh. Obviously, Forrest is now going into fading. You've got Cal McGregor, obviously, and goes without saying, as the captain there. But I mean, if you're looking at, most recent ones to have came through, then there hasn't really been many breakthrough from the youth academy in the last couple of seasons. These ones that we were talking about there, Tony Ralston even, got his debut under Brendan Rodgers a number of years ago. So it's not as if he's a new one to the fold. Welsh has been playing for now a couple of years as well. He's probably the most recent of the youth products from the academy to now be getting a bit of game time. And even then, he's probably about the fourth choice centre-half for most, I would say. So there's definitely some work to be done on that side, because there is definitely a lot of money that's been spent on improving Lennoxtown and making sure that is as good as it can be. And then I think Barrowfield is it for the actual youngsters. So there is that opportunity there to actually go ahead and make a statement. I'd like to see them do something with the youth setup, because it should be producing more players that are able to come in and make more of a statement for me. And it's one of those ones, maybe it's just because we are a bit impatient at times, that doesn't happen as much, and that sometimes it goes back to the old Juranovic-Ralston argument that we've had on this before, whereas people just look more towards the player that comes in that might be an international for another country in Europe. And then they don't...
name.
What's that?
A sexy name.
A sexy name, that's it. Well, that sometimes does work, although I do think Juranovic might well have been needed at right back on Sunday. I didn't think Ralston had his finest game by any stretch of the imagination on Sunday, but it's one of those ones, you look at and you always think there should be more players coming through in the academy for me. So that's certainly something I would like to see a bit more of. And I mean, in terms of the infrastructure of the club, of course, you've got to be keeping on top of that. I think Celtic, generally speaking, with Celtic Park, have done a reasonably decent job there. I take your point. Obviously, the changing rooms and things like that could possibly be more modernised now going forward. It'll be interesting to see, obviously, with all of that going on and the money coming in, how much of that they're actually going to be looking at in club infrastructure, and how much they're going to be looking at in terms of actually playing squad, because I think the players are still going to need to be, in terms of players in the squad, about another 3 or 4 possibly coming in. I would say in the summer it's not going to be as big an overhaul as last summer, absolutely not, but you're still going to need another few names in there to make sure we're competing if we want to even have a chance at making any sort of dent in the Champions League. There's absolutely no two ways about it. They need to be improving the first team squad again and continue to build, as well as dealing with the challenge that'll come again domestically. So it'll be interesting to see exactly what they do on that side of it. But I mean, the great thing about it, Russell, is if they're going to have that 40 million coming in, they're not going to be short of options, are they?
No.
That's what they improve.
No, and I think, Jonathan, Celtic won't be right now. The thing is, the beauty of that loan to buy thing with Cameron Carter-Vickers is we had a year with those lads to get our affairs in order, i.e. winning a league title that gives you guaranteed group stage football, letting them just experience Celtic Park under the lights, experience days like Sunday. When you look at Jota's reaction, for example, when he scores, don't tell me that's not a man enjoying his football. And the beauty of that is, of course, they're 2 guys, whilst they're not maybe additional players as such, they're additional permanent contracts. They're not additional to the squad, but they already now know the environment that they're signing for. They're ready made to go. And it allows Ange to either, if they're coming in or not coming in, either way, the scouting on them's done. They've been at the club all year, right? You can move on and let businessmen deal with that. Do you know what I mean? If you've got a bigger network, which I'm not convinced the structure at Celtic has enough people in it now. Obviously, Jonathan, it was another story this week that's been, I would say, mixed reaction. Mark Rowell is appointed to the head of recruitment role. He's been like one of the head scouts, I think, at Man City for a decade, Jonathan. It is a mixed reaction from the Celtic fans, notably one of the bloggers going absolutely tonto at the world for anyone who disagrees with him. We've seen that before, sadly, of him over the years. But there's 2 sides to this. I think track record-wise, Mark Lawwell, you'd be going, that's a sound investment. And it's someone who also understands, the ins and outs of Celtic. The other side of it is, and this is where fans get frustrated, is the Talking Heads song comes back to me, Jonathan. Once in a lifetime. And when David Byrne is looking in the camera and he's going, same as it ever was, same as it ever was. And when you've got two Strachan's at the club, David Kelly was saying that in the comments. Good to have you on as always, David. And he was saying two Strachan's. I forgot there was two Strachan's, but there is. He's right. Two Strachan's at the club and a Mark Lawwell. And we reckon a Lawwell production in terms of a couple of the signings last summer. A Lawwell production, more than likely the manager. Maybe it was Mark Lawwell, though, when I say that, Jonathan. You never know. I think he certainly gave the tip-off about Mr. Postecoglou's availability. I don't think Celtic had randomly scoured the J-League, Jonathan, and went, oh, he's fancied a manager from the J-League. You know, I've always what Ange Postecoglou's up to. So, yeah, I think there's a mixed reaction, and I think it's fair. At times, Alan Robertson's saying that McCarthy was a Lowell signing. McCarthy and Scales, I'm not convinced they're Ange Postecoglou signings. And you know what's weird as well? Because I want your thoughts on this, right? And then you could talk about, obviously, the appointment of Lowell. But no matter who it was with the head of recruitment, I've just said we need to get a bigger structure set up so it targets that may be identified and lists and all that stuff, Jonathan. That if Ange were to get some belter of a job in the summer, and God forbid that happens, and I don't see it, but just imagine if it did, right? We need to have a structure in place. It can't just fall apart completely because of one man's doing that much. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But let's go conversely to that and go, who's the only guy you want in charge of transfers to Celtic at this moment in time? And Postecoglou's strike rate, he's been commended for it, left, right and centre this season. His strike rate in signings has been wild. It's been so successful. So, where do we all stand on it? Get in the debate.
Yeah, I mean, well, certainly when you go back to Postecoglou, there's certainly no margin for error this season when it came to the transfer market, and he's barely missed. I wouldn't say any of his signings have really missed their mark yet. I think the only one who's not really featured as much has been Ideguchi, but that might just be because he's getting up to speed with the game. But going back to the actual point, and in terms of Law, I don't have a problem with it personally. I think, people look at it, and because what happened when Peter Lawwell's last season is, I think a lot of people will be the defining legacy of Peter Lawwell is the fact he didn't deliver 10 in a row, which we had all expected to happen. As I think it sometimes still counts against him in that. And I think, if you're looking at somebody like Mark Law and just looking at him in isolation, forgetting for a minute that he's Peter's son, and his record looks pretty impressive to me. He's been at the head scout for the City group for a number of years. I think it's over 10 years, is it? So he's been doing this for a long time. Obviously, when you add back in the fact that he's got the Peter Lawwell connections, he's obviously going to have a good indication as to how the club is run. Whether people think that's a good thing or a bad thing, I guess, is up for debate. Given the fact that there's not been wholesale changes made at the top of the club, what everyone was predicting would happen last season. There's still a lot of the old heads are still there on the board that were there last season. But if you're looking at it, I don't see any issues with Mark Lawwell taking the job. I think it's fine. I think Postecoglou's needing the extra pair of hands to help him with recruitment, because Postecoglou's got a lot on his plate. I still think Postecoglou will have final say on whatever happens, given how successful he's been. I don't think this is going to be a case that with Lawwell coming in, he's now going to be pretty much dictating the transfers to Ange Postecoglou. Postecoglou doesn't strike me as the type of manager who would accept that by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm fairly relaxed about it. I think Lawwell will bring something to the table. I think the fact that Lawwell was the one who, for me, I suspect was the one who found Postecoglou to begin with. I think it was probably him. I think the fact they've got a working relationship already, the fact it's been reported that Postecoglou is quite happy with the appointment, there's nothing really to me that feels that this one's a rocking of the boat moment for me that causes concern whatsoever. But it's one of those ones you'll find out over time just how good he is. Because let's face it, at this point, nobody really knows for sure whether we or not we've stumbled onto something excellent. It's just by chance he's Peter Lawwell's son, or whether indeed it is the old Boys Act doing another favour to Peter Lawwell and giving his son a job. But the proof will be in the pudding over the summer as to whether or not this works. But for me, I don't see anything that's causing me any great deal of concern here whatsoever at this moment in time.
I think there's some interesting views coming in, though. And I think, Les Watt's brilliant to have you on the bus, mate. And he's saying, I don't mind the appointment, but if he goes tits up, it has to be seen as a mistake and acted on rather than it becoming a problem that starts to undermine the club. And boy, oh boy, Jonathan, if next season we were to fall off a cliff as spectacular as we did 2 years ago, I can't see it, but just say we did, I think it would go back to all this sort of thing, the jobs for the boys, bowling club CSC, I'm seeing coming in the comments as well from Hail times 2. I mean, I think there's Hail times 2. Hail times 2. Hail is Hail times 2.
Oh dear.
I think it's got the potential. Whilst it shouldn't be shaking trees at this moment in time, Jonathan, I think it's one of those appointments that retrospectively Celtic fans, if we have a poor season next year, or even a poor recruitment, Jonathan, things like that, I think that will get used both ways. It will get seen as visionary, and is it not great to be part of the City group if we have another sensational season next year and make a wee bit of inroads in Europe? And I think as well, though, like, do you know what I mean? If it goes bad, I think it's got a potential to go nasty bad, because everyone's going to go, we've seen this movie before, shit like that. Do you know what I mean? So we will find out in due course. I think right now we just need to get behind it. If Andrew's getting behind it, who are we to disagree? Which I think is absolutely fair. But this is very interesting because another angle on it, Gary McDowell, I think, he's got the ball rolling. He said if he gets it, the best, if he was the best candidate, then I'm happy. Do you think we actually interviewed anyone else for the job? That's interesting.
That's a very interesting point, Gary, to be bringing.
Surely we should be when it's this long, by the way.
We should be, but if you ask me the question, did we? Probably not. If I'm going to be completely honest, I mean, not that we've got any insider knowledge unlike other podcasts, but certainly, looking at it, I wouldn't be overly surprised if there wasn't any interviews carried out. I mean, certainly, if my gut was to lead me here, I would say they have appointed him based off the fact that they probably think he can do the job, and there is obviously the element that he's Peter Lawwell's son, which, again, you look at and think, is that really the right thing for a club like Celtic to be doing? Probably not. In fairness, they should really be interviewing different candidates, making sure that they're doing their due diligence, finding out that they're making sure they're getting the best man for the job and not just a man that they know and that's got connections with other people in the board. So it's an interesting one. I would certainly like to think Celtic have done their due diligence and haven't just awarded them the job. Again, you're going to obviously find out in the summer exactly how well it works, but whether or not he was the best candidate for the job does pose a lot of questions, Russell. And I would imagine, what would you think the same, that he's probably just been kind of given the job just because of his last name?
Well, the other angle that Brown Warrior comes in with, which is fair, Andrew's already worked with him, for fuck's sake. He says he's obviously requested him because he trusts him. That could be it as well. And that does sound very nice. And like I say, I think there's two angles on this. I think there's one. Well, it's the garden's rosy. This is the narrative you can get from Brown Warrior, which I think's fair. I think last summer, if he was appointed, when the garden wasn't rosy, I think there'd be a lot of question marks. I think there's two sides to it, by the way. And I'm only trying to play devil's advocate and give both sides. My honest opinion on it, I'm more with you, Jonathan, in the sense that, I don't see it as that big a deal. If the guy's, experienced, if Andrew's happy, I'm happy. But I can see it being a contentious point, mate, if things weren't to go well. But do you know what? See, right now, things are going well. We've brought him in from a position of success. So he's got a great start at it. I seen John Meehan was in the comments there. We had a wee drink in the Savoy on on Saturday. I met a few folk over the weekend, Jonathan. It was good fun. But it's brilliant to see new faces in the audience. We had Les earlier. We've got John Meehan now. Sensational. Coming into the comments, getting involved. John said he'd never missed a Boyce'S show. So it just goes to show you some people who aren't always in the comments still enjoy watching, mate. Big shout out to you all. Now, obviously, if you are watching, hit the like and subscribe button. That's the only time I'm going to ask because it's not really my... Do you know what I mean? I'm shy at doing that. But we will see how we get on. Just interestingly, Jonathan, slightly, I don't know. Someone else said we're unofficially now maybe part of the City group. I mean, you look at Celtic's relationship in terms of players, and it's a sensational connection that we've had over the last 5 to 10 years. It's frightening how many players have... not many Celtic have managed to sell to Man City's first team, but when you look the other way, I mean, if we try and ring some off, I think, you know, you'd be Boyata, Incham, Tenaya, Guidetti. You have a go, Jonathan? You just want me to try and ring them all off?
You kind of took the one I was thinking of, was Incham. That was the first one that was coming to my head, was Incham, but... I mean, there's definitely a few of them. There's definitely been a few of them that came in, and there's probably a few more. I'm sure people will be no doubt saying in the comments. There's a few more that were coming over. I mean, I wouldn't mind like a Kevin De Bruyne or something on loan if that's what we're going to get from Manchester City. That would be nice.
Kevin 14, Samaras, David Kelly says that one. Paddy Roberts. Who could forget 3 folk in a row saying Paddy Roberts? This is better than the date of birth game, Jonathan.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the connections are definitely there. I mean, it's certainly something that Celtic have built with the City group over a number of years.
The Aussie boy that done his knee, Arzani. Good.
Very good, fella. Very good.
Marco, the Del Piero boy. Well done, mate. But yeah, that was just a bit of fun there. And you know, Beaton was at trial at City. That is true because I watched all his clips before he signed for Celtic. It was when like doing that on YouTube was really becoming a thing. And I remember watching his highlights. He played for City in Australia, I believe, near Beaton, which was cool. It was cool. Sinclair and Hart both played for City, but not straight from them. And yeah, I think the link has served as well. I mean, I don't know how intertwined it is in terms of what financial gain we get. But when you list some of those players there, Jonathan, they've certainly been players that we've managed to bring in that have improved the first team squad often, and pretty low risk as well in terms of a lot of them have been loan deals, or in Frimpong's case, 450 grand and punted on for between 11 and 13 million 2 years later.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely...
Not as much as Nathan Patterson, though, Jonathan.
No, not quite as much as Nathan Patterson, no. But when we can always try. We can always try. When it comes to, though, the connections with Manchester City and the City group, it does make an awful lot of sense. I mean, there's far worse clubs to be connected with than a team that's on course currently to win the English Premiership and may well finish the season as the Champions League winners. You know, you're probably thinking players in their reserves, probably not too bad to be bringing into a Celtic shirt, a lot of them. So it's certainly a connection that has paid dividends in the past. There's no two ways about it. It will probably pay dividends again in the future when it comes to looking at players. And, you know, as I say, if you're looking at a club like Manchester City, who are one of the best in Europe at the moment, and it's going to show with how good a season they are having, then there is going to be opportunities to tap into that connection from time to find players that might well suit us. So there's no real reason not to be looking at it from that point of view. And you know, in terms of the whole thing with Lowell coming in, and you know, they're still having those links to Manchester City, and still having had success with a number of the players that we've had throughout the years there. I would imagine it's one that Postecoglou may well look at coming through for as well. So for me, it's all gravy as far as I'm concerned, and it'll continue to work out for a number of years to come. Although it's certainly we're not officially part of it, but you could probably make an argument that they are maybe unofficial partners of the City Group.
I think there is there's more than just a small connection there. But we'll move on. Today, Twitter was alive, Jonathan, with stories coming from Portugal, emanating from Portugal, which I wasn't sure what to make of. I think on the back of Jota again, crucial goal by a very crucial goal at the weekend, obviously, because it ensured we've took another vital point on the way to the title. Obviously, on the back of the emotion he showed, the celebration, the fact he seems to have went back from being in the shadow of CCV as the permanent signing to make, when for some reason it had to be one or the other. It's now you're looking at Jota being in the newspapers over there, or whatever the site was, suggesting that deal's actually close. He's instructed his agent to get terms thrashed out with Celtic. He's made Benfica know that he wants to leave. It's certainly one, Jonathan, that I couldn't understand the negativity towards the past couple of weeks. I think we were being a wee bit harsh. Do you know what I mean? I think Jota's off the boil is very, very different from other players off the boil form. I still think he retains the ball well for us, Jonathan. Just when he's not always, he's pulsating best, it can be more apparent. I think that's because he set a very high standard as well, Jota, I'm also convinced, Jonathan, no matter what it is we need to do to get this deal done, at £6.4 million, €7.5 million, I'll say this again, that's not a lot of money in 2022 on a footballer. If you want to be one of the big boys, or you want to be at the big boys table, it's an investment, Jonathan. It's a wee bit of speculation because to accumulate. Now, I reckon for me, Jota's got all the boxes. We're about to allow him to play on the grandest stage of European club football tournament we've won in the past. And we will be able to bring him to the eyes of people who maybe will be snobbily looking at the SPFL this year and haven't had a chance to catch him. And I think that's not why I want us to sign him, but I just think in time it will be inevitable. Someone will, if he can keep up this form over the next, hopefully 2, 3, 4 years, because he's still a young man. That, to me, 6.4 million, you can, honestly, Celtic's now got, what I would say they've done well in recent years is, I think it's been a good pathway for players that have left Celtic and went down south. A lot have done well. And I think that gives us a wee bit more clout. Like I say, I think, if Van Dijk didn't go on to do what he'd done, I still think Kieran Tierney would have been maybe having to look outside the top 6, which is crazy. But if Van Dijk had to look at Southampton as a realistic option to get in the Premier League, I think Kieran Tierney's of that sort of ilk as well. But I think it all changed, such was the success Van Dijk had, Foster had kind of in spells. And I think that's why you would see clubs coming in now for our best players that are having their best seasons. If they're also doing it in the Champions League, you would have bigger clubs willing to spend bigger money. I don't think the 6.4 million is going to be doing a drain by any stretch of the imagination. I think this is money that will come back to us. That's the way I want to see it.
Oh yeah, 100%. Money will definitely come back around if they decide to bring Jota in. We've seen enough from him this season to suggest there is a quality player there. No two ways about it. So I've not got any issue with that. If they were to go ahead and sign him, I'm absolutely convinced Celtic will turn him for a profit in a few years further down the line. Plus, hopefully, you're going to get to see the benefits of seeing him play in the Champions League and hopefully making an impact through it. So it's a no-brainer for me, particularly if the player, as is being reported, wants to sign. And I remember when I seen him score on Sunday, and it's just the way he tears off after scoring. He looks like a man that is quite happy with where he is, and that he's going to be hanging around for a while. So, it's just one of those ones that can get it done. You're talking about, obviously, the bigger money moves. Now, you've got to remember, particularly if you're looking at a move down south, there's just more and more money being pumped into the Premiership year on year. There just doesn't seem to be an end in sight to the amount of money being made in England at the moment. So it actually means that, you know, when you add that in, you'd actually probably get even more money like 3 or 4 years down the line than you would for a guy like whatever Tierney went for, etc. So it's another one there that, for me, there's so much positives to be taken from making that sort of signing. Really, if they get the Champions League money, Celtic should be pulling out all the stops to be bringing in both him and Carter Vickers. There's absolutely no question about that to me. They should both be getting signed up, and that should be Postecoglou's first bit of business in the transfer window, is doing everything he can to make sure that the two of them are back at Celtic Park next season on permanent deals, and then you build from there. But, you know, in terms of what Jota brought, I thought he had a very, very good game against Rangers on Sunday. I think we have been sometimes a little bit overly critical of him when he hasn't perhaps hit the heights that we know he's capable of. But you've got to remember, he's still a young player. He's still adapted to a new country, etc. There is things going on in the background there with him. And I think, you know, as far as I'm concerned, he's been one of our better players, and he's one of the reasons Celtic are where they are in this title race. And I think it would be absolutely folly if we didn't try and sign him on a permanent deal when it's only 6.4 million. You're talking it's only 400,000 more than we paid for Chris Sutton, you know, 20 years ago. So it's not a big outlay. And I think if Celtic are at the stage where they're still shaking in their boots at spending £6.4 million on one player, then we are in a bit of trouble.
Absolutely. If we're really going next season back to the top table, I mean, you know, we've not got the bollocks or the convictions to spend it on proven goods, by the way, in Jota, proven goods in Cameron Carter-Vickers. And this is where I don't understand this debate. It's the strangest debate. The only similarity between the two players is they're both on loan, both with options to buy. They both came with options to buy, Jonathan. First option for us, because it's realistic we could take them both. The straight shootout stuff between one or the other, when one's a centre-half, one's a winger, I'm not getting it. I'm not following it. It doesn't make sense. It's not, and it's the priority will be the same as it was 10 months ago. Excuse me. 10 months ago, Jonathan, we agreed to have first option at the end of the season. It's just natural for football fans. And by the way, I don't mind that, but we just get a wee bit impatient. We get a wee bit giddy because we're seeing them do brilliant things on the pitch. Why have we not got them signed in January? Well, the deal is at the end of the season, you know, and you'll have seen them over a longer period by then. I don't think Celtic are going to be hesitant in this. If they can get them both, they'll go for both. You know, if they can do it, I think they'll activate both the clause fees, and then it'll be down to Celtic to have the strength of their convictions on wages. Now, there's arguments coming in about wages, and I think Dalhallo reckons Callum McGregor's on 45,000 a week right now. I didn't think it was as much as that. But it's a damning indictment. And it's not all about money, by the way, but it just shows you Henrik Larsson was on 43,000, I think, a week, Jonathan, 22 years ago. If we've got a lesser wage structure than that now than then, if Celtic really put their foot, you know, pedal to the metal, Jonathan, in what has been 20 years of dominance, 16 titles in 21 years, you know, the opportunity's been there for us to have pulled further away, I would say. So this time, we've got a manager that's united the club again. We've got an opportunity to be at the top table with the big boys again. We don't think twice about proven quality, Jonathan. He's done it in a Celtic shirt for a season. Jota, if the rumours are true, makes sense. Now, I don't think it's remiss to say there's two darlings in the team. Now, I met a boy yesterday called Kieran. He promised me he's going to be watching. I don't know if he will. But he's like, well, you make this point. And I kind of go with it. He was like, we've always had, you know, or like to think Celtic teams over the years always have, like, you know, maverick footballers, Jonathan, guys who play the right way, and they make you smile. They get bums off seats. I'm thinking Kyogo and Jota this season, I'm not saying either are as good as the other two that I'm going to mention, but I think Celtic's nowhere near as good a first team as what it was 22 years ago, in my humble opinion. I think they've got similarities in terms of, like, the way they play the right way. and the difference in the variations in goals Kyogo's scored, and the sort of the wee moments that you get. I mean, there was a moment with Jota, Jonathan. I was lucky to be sitting like touch side basically the game, pitch side, Jonathan, at the game on Sunday. There was just a moment the ball's travelled 30, 40 yards, and Jota's in the air bringing it down on his right foot, and it's silence, I talk about Tom Rogic slippers, and I think, like Moravchik was, like Larsson was back in the day, Jonathan. I think these guys play like that, and I think if you were to keep Jota and Kyogo the next 2, 3, 4 years, I think they could leave Celtic with reputations not a million miles, but certainly realistic, mate. If Celtic as a team progress, they'll go down as that these sort of players if they can get there. And what I mean by, I don't mean like it's all about the reputation. When Henrik's the greatest thing I've ever seen in Celtic shirt by a country mile. Lubo's not far behind. But what I think these two guys do is they pique interest, Jonathan. They get your bums off a seat. They play the Celtic way, don't they?
Yeah, no, they definitely do. And, when you're looking at people like Jota and Kyogo, they've been such a big part of why this season has been successful. That, it makes absolute sense that Postecoglou may look to build his attacking options, around players like that. I mean, certainly Kyogo's one that he will be using a lot more next season, provided he stays fit, I would imagine. But obviously with Jota, he's a very technically good player. He's proven himself in a lot of big games this season. He's came up with big moments. You have to look at really in the last couple of weeks. He's got, 2 goals and an assist, if you're including the Ross County game and the Rangers game in the last 2. And even going further back from that, he's made some big contributions, telling contributions. In fact, you probably turn around and say the moment things actually started turning in Celtic's favour way back was actually at Pittodrie the first time around when Jota gets the winning goal and Celtic break their duck of not being able to win away from home in the league, and it's Jota who gets that important goal on that day. So there is definitely signs of him being one of these sort of players that could absolutely relish being in a Celtic jersey for years to come and become an instant fan favourite. I think he could certainly go down that sort of path of being somebody that people will look back on extremely fondly, 5-10 years from now, when they're looking back at this Celtic team and it's been consigned to history. And, for me, there's just no reason not to be bringing him in for these sort of reasons. It makes absolute sense. The players seems to be suggesting he wants to make it happen. The club will want to make it happen. Let's get it done.
Yes, Jonathan. And on that note, we will call it a night. And we did start a wee bit later because we went on the Tuesday. But again, we're another step closer without quite being able to have that title clinched, Jonathan. But we are a step closer. We believe we're a step closer to Jota signing. We've now got ahead of recruitment, so we're a step closer to having the tools or more tools that we would expect for Ange. It's all very positive, Jonathan. As always, on the Boyce'S bus. But listen, everybody who's came in the comments been absolutely mobbed. Cycling Samurai just came in just to harness the negativity. I'm just going to block him. I can't be asked. No one here is a financial expert. Let's not forget. He's came in, he's calling Jota greasy and things. I just don't think we need that vibe, mate. It's not what we do on the bus. I know there's a ding-dong between Chunks and Bob McBob at times, but we'll get on with that. But yeah, I think on the whole, to sum up, Jonathan, things are looking good for next season. Things are looking good for a prolonged summer, and one that Celtic already, if we're to believe reports, are in, getting the ball rolling for making signings happening early again like we did in January. That's with the head of recruitment and obviously the stories emanating from Portugal. Listen, thanks again for your efforts. Thank you to everyone in the comments. This has been another epic Monday. I know we're just short of the hour mark, but my voice is struggling, as you can tell. So I think I've done more than enough talking shite this weekend to last me a lifetime. I'll see you all later. This one is for Chunky Chicken.
Some of his comments about me deliberately trying to cause controversy. Well, I work in the media now, and you've got someone sitting there next to you who's an embarrassment to the media profession. He's an apologist. He's a charlatan.